Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our second session during International Education Week. This session is honoring Indigenous wisdom and culture through international education. And I'm going to give everybody a minute to join us. This is a webinar, so you will not be able to see the other participants. You'll only see the panelists and myself as moderator, but you will have a chance you can drop a note in the chat that is open if you would like to greet people and say where you are calling in from. And also we do have the Q&A open. So we do encourage you to think of questions and add your questions in the Q&A, and we will reserve time at the end to answer questions you might have. So thank you, Pablo, for being the first to say hello. So just go ahead and feel free to use the chat if you would like. So we wait for everybody to join. I should also mention that this session is being recorded for our colleagues around the world for whom this time period, middle of the afternoon in the Western Hemisphere, does not work for our colleagues in other parts of the world. So thank you for your willingness to be part of a recorded session so that we can make this more accessible to our colleagues. Great. I see people checking in and saying some friendly hellos there. So, okay. Well, I think that we are going to get started. Again, for those of you just joining us, you're joining the second session, second webinar hosted by AFS this week in honor of International Education Week, which is a time to celebrate all that are about international education, a time for us to learn and get new perspectives and ideas from each other and honor the important work that we are all involved in, which is having a more global understanding of each other. So it is really an honor for me to be hosting this honoring Indigenous wisdom and culture through international education session. My name is Linda Stewart, and I work at AFS International. And I am greeting you from Minnesota in the United States, where I acknowledge the land of the Dakota and Anishinaabe people. I live just 3 kilometers from Wakpatanka, which is the Mississippi River, and Bedote. Bedote is the place where the Mississippi and the Minnesota rivers unite. They come together, and it is a central location to the Dakota creation stories. And it's important, I believe, to acknowledge the people on whose land we live, learn, and work as we seek to improve and strengthen our relationships, especially here in the United States with our tribal nations and our Indigenous peoples around the world. But we know that acknowledging the words are not enough. We do have to ensure that the institutions provide support and resources and programs to increase access for all. But as Dr. Chuta Rislin Baldi, who is a member of the Hoopa Valley tribe in California, so graciously said, land acknowledgement gets you a start. And so I think let this be the start of our work in knowing and understanding each other more, and a great start to International Education Week. So I think I can try to get my slides to move. No, not quite yet. One second. I'm using the 2 screens, which is always interesting, right? Here we go. Here's a picture of what I was mentioning, the Mississippi River and the Bedote. And this is a beautiful piece of art from a Dakota artist. Her name is Marlena Miles, and she's based here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And I mentioned that I'm so close to the middle center part of this piece of art, which is Bidote, the center of creation in the Dakota belief. And if you see where the little airplane is by the lake, that's where my house is. Not on the airplane, but by the lake. And that lake is called Lake Nokomis. And Nokomis in Ojibwa means grandmother. And it's so meaningful for me to know the history of the land that I currently reside on and be in partnership with the peoples, the original peoples here. So I would like to invite you today to think about your institution and your relationship with Indigenous peoples through international education. It's really an honor for me today to share this virtual space with my colleague Andresa Martin from AFS International and Alina and Kaya, who are here to be the primary speakers for our event. I'm Linda. I am the Director of Global Education Innovation and the lead for our virtual exchange programs and content and curriculum at AFS from youth to adult learners that are seeking to develop their global competence. Andresa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Andresa Martins, and I'm the Deputy Chief Program Officer. And as part of that team, I am particularly interested in making our programs more accessible, inclusive of all people. So in that perspective, this is why I'm very interested in, having all of you join this session so we can learn how to make our programs more inclusive.
Just a couple things about AFS. So AFS is a global network of organizations around the world that seek to develop global competence and create peace, justice, and greater understanding through education, international education around the world. We do that through exchange programs primarily. We also do it through virtual exchange and other educational events. You can see kind of the size and scope of the organization. And for those of you that might be interested in learning more about AFS, we have lots of opportunities to do so, and we'll share many of those at the end. Now I would like to introduce our esteemed panel of Indigenous leaders. They're coming to you today to provide perspective on inclusion of the marginalized voices in international education, which are often the Indigenous peoples, and what you as institutional representatives, for those of you that are, can do to ensure their inclusion and ensure that the design and development of the offerings, the educational opportunities that you have are culturally affirming, intellectually enriching for all. First, I'd like to introduce to you Alina Namuncura Rodenkirchen. She is of Chile, born originally in 1985 in the Panguipulli area, the Mapuche territory, was later taken and adopted to Germany. During her studies in Germany, she obtained a master's degree in regional sciences of Latin America with a focus on political science, history, and linguistics. She received a scholarship from the Kremer Foundation for research on the Mapuche situation during the Pinochet dictatorship. She is specialized in language teaching methodologies through the Goethe Institute and the University of Dusseldorf, and teaches German, Mapuzungun, and methodologies for the teaching of Mapuzungun, which is the language of the Mapuche people, at the Catholic University of Temuco. Alina is a traditional educator in a rural school teaching and collaborates with different Mapuche peoples to support the revitalization of the language. She is a member of the Kimultu and works in interpretation and translation of English, German, and Mapuzungun and Spanish. Welcome, Alina. I'm also going to briefly introduce our next speaker, who is Kaya, and then I will turn it over to each of them to go more in depth. Kaya Ilaquiche is a 19-year-old Indigenous woman from Ecuador. She belongs to the Quechua Pansaleo community. She is a law and economics student currently studying at La Católica in Quito. She is also Miss Salcedo and president of the Social Development Board of the province of Cotopaxi. Since she was a child, she has been linked to the organizational processes of the indigenous communities, peoples, and nationalities of Ecuador, part of the Cotopaxi indigenous movement known as CONAI. Kaya grew up seeing how her family and her community fight to this day for their civil and political rights, for agriculture, for the recognition of their culture and traditions. She advocates for the political participation of young people, true democracy, development, education, health, and revitalization of Indigenous culture, and social assistance and equity, always promoting. With that, I am going to turn it over to Alina. Thank you both for your time today, and we look very much forward to hearing your insights. Alina, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Mari kompuche melepalo pil mapu. Alina na mukura roden keshinta inche. Mapuchengen kimel tu chefingen ka. Chilka tu fingen mapusumun mu. My name is Alina Namukura Rodenkirchen. Thank you for introducing me. I am connected here from Temuco in the rural area of Chani Chani. I am a traditional educator, and as Linda said, I was adopted to Germany. So I came back to my homeland, and I was able to reconnect here with the people, with the culture, with the society. And I was able to reconnect through education. And I think this is like a very global topic I would like to talk about. And well, I grew up in a different society, and everything was different. So when I came back here, I was a little bit surprised about what I've seen here, because when I do work at school and when I do work at the university, in both places, I always miss something fundamentally. And this is the appreciation of our knowledge and of our life wisdom and experience as Mapuche people. As I work in school, for example, as a traditional educator, in my case, I am lucky because I was able to get the education how to work with children, and I was able to prepare myself for teaching at schools. Because previously I worked mainly in adult education. And when you work with children, it's like another responsibility if you have, because it's a new generation. And this responsibility is so heavy sometimes, because you want to shape these children. And if you're lucky, the things you can share with them will remain in their memory and will accompany them on their journey in their lives. And the demands you have on yourself are therefore very high, and you want to give a positive effect on these little beings, and you want to awaken this little flame of curiosity in them as best as possible. You want to give them all the tools they need to grow into self-confident Mapuche adults. So I have trained and attended many seminars, and so far I have used, and I'm always using every opportunity to learn more about the world and the brains of the children. And sometimes I see that the traditional educators who have always lived here do not have these opportunities, because the state or the Ministry of Education is not giving more tools to them to work with the children of today, because sometimes we see after COVID that the brains have changed of the children, or even our brains changed. And when we are talking about the traditional educators here, these are persons who are libraries on two legs. Most of them are native speakers, and they have accumulated a great deal of knowledge and wisdom over the time. And like our world is changing here too, and every child has got an iPhone or a mobile phone, their brains are no longer what they used to be. So if a trained teacher really has difficulties keeping the pupils' attention, it is often even more difficult for a traditional educator to work with the children. The children do not grow up anymore sitting by the fireplace, listening to their grandparents telling stories. Unfortunately, children, all the days, mostly they only have their cell phones to keep them occupied. If we want to talk about appreciation, we see that the Chilean state and the Ministry of Education are only half-hearted supporting the idea that children should also come in contact with their indigenous root and with their language. If the state was really interested in this, firstly, our language would be officially recognized, and it's not like this. Secondly, there would be a serious program that traditional educators could go through to prepare themselves for school teaching. Often I see that their knowledge is so profound that it's so difficult to break it down in such a way that children can learn it too. It can often be so frustrating because traditional educators don't see any learning effect in the children, and sometimes they say, well, it's so difficult because they're not sitting on their chairs, they don't want to hear, they don't want to listen. And we have like several learning strategies among Mapuche. One is called Ngulam, like to give advice. So the person who is listening can be better, but the children are not listening. So it's very difficult to really apply all the indigenous knowledge and all the methodologies indigenous and Mapuche people do have, because the children, the Mapuche children of today, their brains are not made anymore to get those, to work with those strategies. And I think this is sometimes a little bit sad, and because the traditional educators here, they sacrifice so much. They go to school every day. Even sometimes they get frustrated, but they go to school every day out of a deep conviction. They leave their houses, they leave their animals when they're living on the countryside, they leave their families, they leave maybe even the education at their own home, uh, because they feel like this deep calling to pass on the knowledge to the next generation of the children's school. And well, because of this, I'm very happy to be invited here to this webinar, a webinar just called Honoring Indigenous Wisdom and Cultures Through International Education. And this is so important because there is so much. Well, I'm still young. I consider myself young. I'm still young, and I see so many elders with so much wisdom, and we have to learn so much, and the children could have so many opportunities to learn from all this wisdom they have, but the structure is not there so that the elders can really teach. So sometimes I think that our next opportunity should be the education out of the system, to build our own schools, our own Mapuche schools with our own programs, with our own methodologies, and with our own rules, because even they say, yeah, no cell phone at the school, but there's always all the cell phones are there. So maybe I will wait for the questions afterwards, because then I can't stop now. Thank you if you have any questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Alina. Appreciate that. That's an excellent introduction. And I think there will be some more questions, especially to better understand this last idea that you were mentioning about a system outside of the system, right? A system of and for the Mapuche people. I'd like to turn it over to Kaya to also give a similar introduction and sharing. Kaya?
Okay, so should I like start my whole presentation or just a little introduction?
You can go as you please. You're more than welcome
Okay,
to give your whole introduction.
Okay, but can you okay, wait. Wait. I took a little presentation for this. Okay. Wait.
We can
Wait.
see it. Yep, it's
Yeah, you can see it?
go.
Okay.
We can see it, but go ahead and make it bigger into presentations.
Okay.
Yep, there it is.
So, well, okay. Mashikuna, panikuna, pushakuna, Ecuador mamajakta, shutipi hatun napaita, chaskipai. Yukashuti mikankari la quiche, Quichua pueblo pansala warmi, Camanche, yachachi. Well, hello everyone, my name is Kaya Laquiche. I am a young indigenous woman for the province of Cotopaxi, located in the Andean region. I am 19 years old and I am a law student. The indigenous movement in Ecuador has been a fundamental pillar for the protection of the rights of indigenous people. We have in Ecuador 15 nationalities and 19 indigenous people communities. La CONAIE, which is Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, is our biggest representative in our country, and our president is Leonidas Issa. He is Leonidas Issa Salazar. He is indigenous too. He is from Cotopaxi too, and he is Quichua Panzaleo too, just like me. Let's start with a little bit of history in Ecuador. The indigenous movement in Ecuador were not recognized, and we were discriminated against. And so for our ways of living, for our beliefs, for our languages and education. In 1990, the CONAIE and the indigenous people decided to raise their voices for this injustice. For this injustice. And this is how the Great Uprising of 1990 the Inti Raymi Uprising occurred. The indigenous people have several demands for the government of that time. Among them, they ask respect for culture, also that Ecuador be declared as a plurinational country, an intercultural state. Likewise, he right to have territory, to speak our own indigenous languages, the right to not be discriminated against, to have our own education, bilingual, respect the forms of ancestral medicine, and the care of our nature. So the name was Land, Culture, and Freedom. That was the voice of the struggle of the indigenous uprising in 1990 between May 28 to June to June 11. The indigenous struggle was articulated based on the merit of the defense of their and the rights of indigenous nationalities. The indigenous movement in Ecuador has been a binding force of social forces to the point that sometimes the Union of Workers and Transporters take shelter within it. In this context, in 2008, the Constitution of Ecuador was reformed and it was declared as an intercultural and plurinational country in its first article. Likewise, 21 collective rights of the indigenous people of all Ecuador are recognized, where the right to maintain the freely develop of our identity, our languages, our ancestral territory, our formal social and political organization, our customs, our indigenous justice, the right of develop and strengthen the bilingual intercultural education system in indigenous communities, as well as international conventions, such as the Convention 169 of the OIT, refers to the rights of indigenous peoples and bilingual intercultural education. Ecuador's own constitution recognized in his Article 29 that it's the duty of the state to guarantee education without exceptions and its freedom to learn and teach it in our own languages and cultural environment. Also, the CONAIE continues to be the main organization at the front of the defense of these rights, including strengthening bilingual intercultural education, supporting youth and the student movement that rights for quality and dignified education, and also rejecting budget cuts that affect education, guaranteeing the participation and equitable leadership of women and youth in decisions, making spaces in the life plans and territorial governments, as well as the strategies for the defense of our territory and withdrawals of the community indigenous guard. from the spiritual, cultural, political, and organization points of view. This is how the youth of the indigenous people have begun to follow the path of our parents and our ancestors who have fought for their rights within the organizations. There are several groups of young indigenous people leading projects in education, technology, politics, and more. I am from Cotopaxi, a province located in the center of Ecuador, and there are very young people from all the Ecuador, in the north, in the south, in the Amazon region. We have a lot of people and indigenous young persons that are in very projects. Also, that persons defend and lead at the international level. Personally, the role of the youth of the Conaye from the Andean zone has focused on maintaining and revitalizing great traditions such as the indigenous guard to confront illegal mining in the Amazon region, communication and community journalism, political and organizational training of young people. Workshops and meetings have been held to defend the 21 collective rights meeting where young people lead and debate controversial issues for our country. We also carry out awareness campaigns on popular consultations, meaning extraction, talks of natural reserves such as the Yasunis in the Amazon. And now, I strongly believe that in this phrase, that is being young and not revolutionary is a contradiction, even biological. And that is why when the state does not guarantee our indigenous rights, we protest. We go out to the street, we raise our voices, young people and adults, we go out to strike against governments that do not respect and are corrupt. Indigenous students from universities organize ourselves from each space and we begin to raise our voices. Last Friday, November 15, there was a great representation, a great repression by the Ecuadorian state and President Daniel Noboa towards a demonstration against the power cuts we have, the lack of work, insecurity, and budget cuts of public universities, where several young university students, unions, and organizations have come out to march. We believe that as young people, it is our hands to continue revitalizing our culture and our languages. Many indigenous youth are studying university courses such as law, economics, medicine, engineering, and many more. And we continue to fight that more young people can access to higher education. We continue to fight so that the government does not make economic cuts to the public education, and we will continue to stand up for a truly intercultural and bilingual education. And that was a little bit of Ecuador, what we do in Ecuador. Ours as students in many other universities. I'm from the Catholic University, and we have partners from the Central University, which is a public university, from the San Francisco University. We are a lot of indigenous young people that are taking and leading these spaces. We make workshops, we make webinars also between each community of all Ecuador. And we know that it's in our hands, as I say, it's in our hands to continue revitalizing our culture, our languages, and our whole tradition. So that was my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed. I'm not speaking English, I'm learning English. I have prepared my my letter, so I hope you have enjoyed this.
Oh, I think we've enjoyed it so much. Thank you, Kaya. Look at you're getting all these reactions, hearts and claps, etc. It's fascinating. I think one of the key differences that I heard from you versus the situation in Chile is that some of the indigenous languages are recognized in Ecuador, right? And they are recognized as national languages. Is that true? Are there some languages, Kaya, that are acknowledged as official languages beyond Spanish?
No. Well, Ecuador in their constitution in the first they say that Ecuador is intercultural and plurinational, but Spanish is the official languages that many of the Ecuadorians speak. But also in the 15 nationalities, we have a lot of languages. We have Quechua, that is my language. we have Shuar, we have Guarani, that it's most in the Amazon region. We have a lot of more different languages.
Okay, but the one that's officially recognized by the government is Spanish, and I think Alina was telling us that that's the situation in Ecuador as well, right?
Well, the Ecuadorian state recognizes all the nationalities, the traditions, and the languages. I think in a social way, most of the people speak Spanish, and also more of the young indigenous people, don't speak Quechua. They are also like forgetting their own languages. And well, there is a few groups of indigenous young people that are like taking these spaces, and they also are teaching to other people, to other young girls and boys, Quechua or other languages. And well, I think is part of this is because many of the people has this fear to be discriminated still right now, still over times. And well, I think we are the future of our nations, the youth. So I think we have to recognize, we have to know what we are because we were born this way. I mean, I'm indigenous. I'm not I am so proud to be indigenous, and my father's always have told me that you was born this way, you have nothing to do if you want to be other person, you cannot, you are like this. And I think it is what we have to do. We have to recognize, we have to love what we are, and we don't have to feel shame. We have to revitalize because we are the difference in our country. We are the culture. We have tradition. We have languages. We are the difference, and I think that is what makes a state very diversity of nationalities and indigenous communities and people.
Excellent. Go ahead, Andresa.
No, I was between the comment that Alina made in the beginning about the challenges that traditional educators are having in terms of access to resources and so forth, and now the comments Kai is making. I see some comments on the chat. I think there's this perhaps nuance that becomes very critical. The difference between something recognized but being official or well supported, right? When is it only, for example, something that is a recognition and acknowledgement, or when it's something prioritized, incentivized, right? And I think that's a little bit of what you are talking about, that policies may not be, or law may not be enough in many contexts unless there is some political will and resources to really make that a priority. And I was curious as to what are some of the things that you feel that the recognition should be followed by, right? What are some additional incentives that you'd like to see in order for this recognition to be more meaningful or perhaps more realizable?
Me?
Alina, if you... Go.
Yes, okay. Well, maybe a short anecdote, because when I was living in Germany, I started to come back here like every year to learn more Mapusungun, more of our language. And I was participating in a round table for Mapusungun and for the official recognition of the Mapusungun. And I remember very, very clear that the government told us, yes, we will recognize Mapusungun officially in June when we do celebrate our new year. It's not a new year, but it's like the solstice, and then a new cycle is beginning. And I said, well, this is like a good opportunity for me to stay. So because of this and some other things, I stayed. And I always tell this because I tell people, well, and I'm here because I'm still waiting for the official recognition of our language. It never happened. So there are always promises and more promises and more promises, but nothing is happening. Because when we always have do round tables, we always do negotiate, we always write letters, we write proposals, we write our demands, we write our ideas about everything what we do want, or how we do want that could be implemented. But the government is not really responding. So after so many years, just think about it, I integrated these round tables and the aggregation and the groups who are working for Mapusungun 8 years ago. They had a lot of many years before working for Mapusungun. So now getting to this point, we don't know that this is going somewhere. So some groups are already starting their own initiatives without support from the state, because it's now we do have to act. We can't rely on the state. We can't rely on the politics from now, from the politician of now. We do have to work for our good. We have to work for our language. And I always say, well, there can be groups, there can be some difficulties in groups, there can be other groups and another groups. But the important thing is to be loyal to your language. Be loyal to your language, love your language, speak your language, teach your language. It doesn't matter what you do, but you have to do it to empower your language. And so we have in different territories already a lot of initiatives who are working, sometimes supported from the state, sometimes not supported. But it's so important to go forward, because now is the time. We can't stay longer here and do nothing. We have to do something now, because the elders are very old now. The speakers of Mapusurung, the native speakers, are dying. So it's now or never. So because of this, so many people now say, okay, we have to learn. The young people learn Mapusurung. They want to go to language lessons by themselves, out of the school, out of the university. And there's such a great demand of Mapusungun and knowing our culture and our language. So it's a very exciting time. And like I said, I think we have to give like more emphasis in initiatives out of the system.
You had mentioned that earlier, Alina. Thank you. That you kind of envisioned a system outside of the system. And I think we know that the native language plays a really critical role in cultural preservation and continuation. What projects or what scenarios have you seen that have been particularly effective for that continuation of the language?
When I think the Maori said that in one generation a language is lost and it needs 3 generations or 4 generations to recover it. So the first thing we have to do is we have to start with the children, because they are the seeds we have to plant and we have to water with wisdom, with knowledge, with language, so they can grow strong and to be the future for our society. There are some immersion kindergartens. Here, one is here in Timuku and one is next to the sea. So it's very difficult for them to survive because they do not have like so much support, and they have to find like different source where to get the money, where how to pay, because when we talk about honoring the wisdom, honoring the language, the people who are working there, I think they can't just go there and just for fun and teach there, because we have to honor the wisdom and the knowledge they do have. So we have to pay them, and we have to pay them good so they can survive. They can do a living out of this work for the future, because they're working with the children. They're planting this little seed in the children. But it's really, really difficult, because when the politicians are changing, maybe one day there's a support, the other day there's the support is gone. So it's a little bit difficult.
Well, and you
There are
mentioned
a couple of
too.
questions. There are a couple of
Okay.
questions that have come up here in the Q&A. So thank you, Rodolfo and Rawe, for sending your questions. One of them is a question, another one's a more like a, an empathetic comment. So the question is that do you, and like this depends, do you think and feel? So not only you don't feel like you have to just provide a rational answer, you can also share your feelings about this, that Indigenous knowledge is often altered or treated as a product to be seen as valid within an academic system or within Western inclined organizations. So it's this idea of making a culture into a product. How do you think and feel about that way of acting? And that could be for either you, Alina, or Kaya.
Okay, I will start. Yes, I think everything is connected, because the state and the state programs, they do love to put us on their brochure. They do love to put our faces in our clothes, to put somewhere to promote, I don't know what things. But I fear that we are like being converted in a type of folklore. We are accepted only because of the colorful diversity, but we are not accepted, and our demands for our rights are not accepted. So this is like the limit, and we can't go further this limit, because then when we are not anymore this colorful diversity, when we are saying, yes, we are this, but we do have demands, we have to survive, and for our survival, we need this right, and this right, and we need this right with financial support. When we say those things clearly, they say, oh, they're radicals, they are violent, you can't negotiate with them. So it's like from one moment to another moment, you changed, and you are not anymore the folklore, you are the terrorist. And this is like the difficulty we do have here.
And Kaya, would you like to respond?
Yes, I completely agree with Alina. It happens the same here in Ecuador. I think it's like the last thing you say, they call us terrorists. In the past, in 2019, we have this great rising. That was in October. It was very mentioned in international ways, I think. We protest for our rights, because that government at that time was raising the gas price and other things price. And in Ecuador, most of the people doesn't have the chance to access to these public services. And they start to call us we're terrorists, we damaged the capital that was Quito, we destroyed the city. And also they treat us like we were just like folklore. When you need like a dance performance or a music performance, they even don't use original indigenous people. They use people who get dressed like indigenous, that is just a costume, is not our indigenous people originals. They make fun of us. They just want us to put, the government loves to put us like, yeah, you have rights, we recognize you, but we don't respect you in the real life. We don't respect you. We don't care about you. We don't care about your ancestral territory. That is, it's been damaged by illegal minery. we don't care about us. We just care economics benefits. I think it's very difficult, and also in the universities. We are still being discriminated here. For example, we have this regional fest that is Inti Raimi. It's a fest for indigenous people, and the universities loves like, yeah, we respect our traditions, our indigenous students. We are going to do this Inti Raimi fest, and then like it's just for that time, and then the other days, and then the rest of the semester, the rest of the year, they doesn't care about us. They doesn't care about the professors or the teachers that are discriminating indigenous people, or the classmates we have that are discriminating us. They doesn't care about that. I think it's a very great problem, and well, I think it is not like just the state has recognized that. Is we as a society have to recognize ourselves, have to respect ourselves, because we want, not because something or someone is telling us to do. We have to do it for our own because we want to be own ones. Sorry, I can't speak a very well
It's
English. I'm
perfect.
trying, but
I think you're doing an excellent job. I wanted to bring up a sentiment on the chat that is talking about Indigenous peoples' poetry and folk tales and oral history, and how that might be used in the school curriculum. We know that many Indigenous groups do have the very deeply rooted systems of education that are emphasize, learning through observation, practice, community socialization, and then participation in cultural and spiritual rituals, these oral teachings. Can both of you take a minute to speak to sort of each of your cultures' specific educational methods? Which are the ones that you see used most, whether it be in non-formal, like sitting at home or in the community with the children, or if it is also institutionalized at an education institution? What are your culture specific educational methods?
Yes, exactly. I think these methods you mentioned, we do have those methods as well. And it's always so funny, because like in the Western world, they say, yes, we have literature and we have different genre. But like if we as indigenous people do not have like literature or oral histories and like different genre and subgenre inside of our society, so sometimes the people are very like surprised, because we have so many as we are like more like an oral society. We have been an oral society. We have so many oral expressions and different oral expressions in our teachings, like epeo, piam. The piam is like a storytelling of methodology, but is kind of related to your reality, what could happen to you in your daily life if you transpass like some protocols, some indigenous protocols. So this we use, or I do use at the school as well with the children, because I do want to get to know them. How do they have to behave if they go into the wood, if they want to go swimming in the river, which spiritual beings they could encounter in these places, and what do they have to do when this is happening. So these PM are my methodology, how I can teach the children how to behave. And this is kind of the limit between being afraid and being curious, because you have to be afraid, because when you are trespassing the protocol, you can get ill. When you do something against the will or the well-being of this spiritual entity, it could happen that you get ill. So we have to teach them how to behave. And then there are the epeos, which are normally stories about animals, and these animals have different characteristics. So there's like the fox. I think the fox in German as well, that has got kind of characteristics. It's very smart, but always like searching the best outcome for himself. And there are always like there's always some learning behind these stories. And this is like a very nice method to teach the children what is good, what is bad, maybe what do you have to do in the Mapuche society, what is different to the Chilean society, and how we can solve maybe these contradictions with the oral storytelling from the former times, bringing them into now using media and everything.
Linda, there was actually a question that came also that was asking specifically about that, if there has been any initiative to digitally record elders speaking, or to like you said, Alina, a lot of young people now use technology as a way of getting information or learning new things. Has there been initiatives to bring this kind of knowledge more accessible through technology? I think that's also one of the questions that we had from Evelyn, specifically one of our guests.
Yes, there are, well, we have books, we have audiobooks, and on the internet there are like some pages where you can interact with the book. You press a button and then you hear or something appears. So yes, we do have, but it's always necessary to have more.
Yeah, perfect. Kaya, anything coming up for you with that as far as digitalization or any specific methods?
We have that great problem. We don't have digital methods or resource for education, for bilingual or intercultural education. And I was going to say that from my experience in my province, that is Cotopaxi, the methods of teaching and education in the communities and in the indigenous communities are like in the city. We are missing these kinds of traditions, these kind of roots, because of most of the people are migrating to the great cities, are migrating to Quito, are migrating to the huge cities, or also are migrating to United States for the critical political and social situation that we are living. And all these traditions, all this culture, all that we are missing that. And in the communities, it's like the city. Just the teacher teach like in the normal way. We don't have, in most of the communities doesn't have internet connection, doesn't have computers, doesn't have digital resources, because they don't have internet, they don't have cell phones, they don't have computers. That's the things that are the most important for right now, for in our times, for the education. So they don't have that because of the politicals doesn't do their job well, because the politicals are corrupt, because the government doesn't do nothing. And in other communities, it's very common that the teachers teach in Quechua or in the native languages that each community speaks. In the northern of Ecuador, that is in Babura province, that is the community of Otavalo, the indigenous people that are the Otavalos, they have their roots, very strong roots, and they are teaching, and they still have their ways of intercultural education. They have this great way to still teaching about about the festivals, like Inti Raimi, like Pauka Raimi. They are very strong with their roots, with their identity, with their culture. And I think we have to learn from them. And also, I think it's a great problem, the digitalization, because we just have, for example, we just have the national anthem in Quechua, or we have just the constitutional book in Quechua, and then we don't have nothing more in in other languages we don't have. And also it's just Quechua. We have a lot of languages from the Amazon region like Shuar, like Guarani, like Zapara, and doesn't exist nothing in their languages. I think it's a very huge problem from the government. Not just this is a problem that comes to the past governments. And well, I think, for example, my university have a little bit of books digitalized from students, but also are in Spanish. They, I think there are not many resources to start like to give to the communities internet to provide them from connection. I think it depends a lot of the governments that we have. And also, let me tell you, we have a very bad governments the last years here in Ecuador.
Ladies, we are running out of time. I'm just going to acknowledge that the chat is very busy right now with questions about language and do the native languages go up through the university and college level? There's also a sentiment here, what if English, rather than be the official language in international education, was a bridging language? So lots of questions around language. It sounds like we could have another session simply on language. I have one final question before I throw up the final slide and get everybody in the audience's feedback. And that question is, we do have a lot of people on the call today that represent institutions, educational institutions that try to facilitate this international education, across borders, across methods. As Indigenous people seeking further inclusion and acceptance, what would be your advice for these institutions? What is something that they should keep in mind, and what would be a best practice you would offer them? We can start with you, Kaya, if you're ready, and then go to Alina.
Okay. Yes, well, I think like I say that most of the people are migrating to other countries, to these great cities, because they don't have this chance to get, for example, to the higher level of university of education here in Ecuador. And also because the public university system is very corrupt, is very wrong, and the government doesn't do nothing to solve that. And I think some of the indigenous young people have the opportunity, like me, to study in university, and others doesn't have that opportunity. And I think it is maybe the organizations or the university could do a great job giving them the opportunity to study, the opportunity to go to do exchange, to go to other countries, to go to other university with I don't know how to say becas.
Scholarships?
Scholarships, yeah. I think that is, and also here in Ecuador, the universities could give them scholarships or for international opportunities, for international activities they can do, because I think we don't have to be worried about us. We have to be worried about those people that doesn't have the chance and the opportunities to get a job, to get study. I think we don't have to do the chance to the people that just take se sacan provecho, ¿cómo diría?
Take advantage of it.
Take advantage of it, and doesn't do nothing right or for the rights of their community.
Thank you, Kaya. Alina, any final words?
Yes. Well, like I studied in Germany, and the most of the time it was free for me to study. And when I came here, I don't know, I got in shock when I saw like the fees you have to pay to go to university, or to go maybe to a better school, or to the kindergarten here. So I think it's not about to make everything easy for indigenous peoples, but I think it's like a way of social justice and reparation, to create like a special access for indigenous peoples to a better education. And maybe if you are already at the university, I think it's important to give a voice to the persons who were silent, and which silence was beaten into them through decades, through years, and open spaces, and open those spaces to let speak the others. It's not necessary that you speak, but create the space, create safe space. If you hear create mechanism, create protocols, how to create safe spaces for Indigenous peoples, because even here it's so difficult sometimes to say something, or if you hear something very some discrimination about racism, and you are not able to say something because you have to fear for your job or something else, or there's no way how to address this to at the university or at the school. I think these are like mechanisms that have to be created.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Alina. 100% creating the space. And we're really grateful. I just want to speak on behalf of myself and Andresa and all of us at AFS International to both of you for taking the time today to come into this space and be willing to share your experience and give us those tips. It's been very meaningful. You can tell by the chat, people have been very engaged. And as we come to the end of our time, I am going to just share a couple pieces of resource with everybody here. I think hopefully you can see my screen now. And this is just that we would love to get your feedback about today's session. So for those of you that would like to, there's a QR code, there's a link. We'll drop the link in the chat. And please just feel free to go ahead and give us your thoughts and tell us if you would like to see a session like this again in the future. And then if you did attend today, you will get acknowledgement for that, and you will receive a digital badge from AFS that you were an international education attendee. But don't just put the badge up, right? The ask here is to take action. So what will be your step, right? We said this was a start, this acknowledgement, but now this is also a call to action. And you heard some of the concrete ideas and tips from both Alina and Kaya. So please make that be your commitment when you put that badge up on your social media. Lastly, we have a series of webinars the rest of this week. So there's a schedule there. I invite you to go to our webpage to look at other wonderful activities throughout the week, talking about deconstructing the elitist approach to IE, bridging in this super connected, digitally connected world, emergencies and initiatives for refugees, empowering global leaders with some facilitation tips, along with also host families and how host families play an important role in international education. So please do join us for the other events. We also have the new AFS Active Global Citizenship Framework that you can learn more about. A lot of what we discussed today, value and belonging, taking action, really understanding and relating to people that are different from ourselves are there. And lastly, Kaya didn't have a chance to speak to this, but she was a representative at our AFS Youth Assembly that took place in August 2024 in New York. But this is an opportunity for any of you on the call that are between 18 and 32 years old to consider come and join and interact with your peers who are very passionate about these issues, climate change, quality education, civil rights around the world. And so I would encourage you to look up that activity for next year if you're interested, and along with all of our virtual offerings and resources. There are so many. But this session has been recorded. Thank you again, Alina and Kaya, for your time, and for all of you for joining and your thoughtful participation. I wish you a great day and a wonderful International Education Week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was a great pleasure to meet you. And well, it was a great time when I was in the U Assembly. I hope we can go back and we can meet again. And I want to say so sorry because of my English. I think that languages is a great barrier. I don't know. It was a great time. Thank you very much. I hope you can learn a little bit of Ecuadorian indigenous people. In our fight for our rights. And it was also a pleasure to know a little bit of Chile. I'm great and I admire you. You work so much, Alina, and you are so great.
You are invited here if you want to come.
I mean, this is International Education Week, and it's great that we had an opportunity to learn together. So thank you so very much. And as Linda said, I always like to think about inspired but inspired to do what, right? So let's think about what this inspires us to do.
Bye, everybody. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Have a great rest of your day.